Watched my daughter through the bakery window, her hands dusted white with flour as she slid a tray of sourdough into the industrial oven. 22 years old, a year left in her nursing program at Ohio State, and she still showed up at Hartwell's Artisan Bakery every Saturday and Sunday at 4 in the morning. The November cold pressed through my jacket as I stood there on the sidewalk waiting for her shift to end. Pride and something close to ache sitting side by side in my chest. Her name was Zoe, my daughter. My whole world since her mother Diane died of a brain aneurysm when Zoe was 6. 16 years of the two of us figuring it out together. I worked as a high school shop teacher in Columbus, made enough to keep the lights on and food on the table, enough that Zoe could have taken out fewer loans. But she never wanted that. She wanted to do it herself. Always had. My phone buzzed on the drive home. My brother-in-law's name lit up the screen. I pulled over. "Hey Leonard, you still coming Saturday? Bonnie's really looking forward to seeing you." Bonnie was my wife's older sister. We'd stayed close after Diane died, or at least I thought we had. Her husband, Leonard, had built a commercial real estate business in Cincinnati over the past decade. They had a house in Hyde Park with a circular driveway and a kitchen that had been featured in a local magazine. "Of course, Zoe and I will be there around noon." A pause, the kind that means something. "Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about." Bonnie thought maybe this year it could just be the adults. She's got some people coming. Her cousin from Scottsdale, a few of her clients. She wants everything to feel a certain way. I kept my eyes on the street. A car passed. Someone's dog barked in a yard nearby. "Zoe's 22, Leonard. She's not a kid." No, we know that. It's just..." He stopped, started again. "She works at a bakery, Leonard. Bonnie's clients are going to ask what everyone does. You know how those conversations go." I felt it land somewhere in my sternum. She works at a bakery because she's putting herself through nursing school. She's paying her own rent. She has a 3.8 GPA. I know that. You know that. But Bonnie's cousin is a cardiologist. Her clients are developers. They'll just see the bakery part. I looked out the windshield at nothing in particular. "We'll be there at noon," I said, and ended the call. I didn't tell Zoe that night. She was excited. She'd bought a new blouse at a consignment shop, deep green, ironed it twice and hung it on the bathroom door. We were eating leftover chili when she said, "Aunt Bonnie's place is always so nice this time of year. Remember when she had that caterer last Thanksgiving? Those little crab things." I remember. "Do you think she'll like the candle set I got her? I've been saving the good tips." I looked at my daughter. Her hair still smelled faintly of the bakery. Her hands had a small burn mark on the left wrist from a rack she'd caught in August. "She'll love it, sweetheart." Saturday came. We drove down I-71 to Cincinnati. The Hyde Park house sat at the end of a quiet street lined with old sycamores, the kind of neighborhood where people rake their leaves the same day they fall. The driveway already had 3 cars in it when we arrived 15 minutes early. I'd planned it that way. Wanted to show we were glad to be there. Zoe grabbed the gift bag from the back seat. "We're early." "Good. We can help with anything." I rang the doorbell. Inside I could hear voices, soft jazz, the clink of glasses. The door opened and Bonnie stood there in a cream blazer, a necklace I didn't recognize, and an expression I recognized too well. "Leonard, you're early." Not a welcome, an observation. "We thought we could help set up." "Everything's already done." Her eyes moved to Zoe. Stayed there a half-second too long. Moved to the blouse. "The cousins are already here. Why don't you go find them, Leonard?" Then to my daughter Zoe, "Would you mind waiting on the back porch? One of our guests has a sensitivity to strong scents. The bakery smell tends to linger, in the hair especially. The porch is heated. You can come in once everyone's settled, maybe 30 minutes. I felt Zoe's arm tighten against mine. I showered. I changed before we left. I'm sure you did, honey. Bonnie's voice was patient the way a kindergarten teacher is patient. These things just travel with you. It's not your fault. The porch is actually lovely this time of year. Bonnie, my voice came out harder than I meant it to. It's fine, Dad. Zoe's voice was small, flat. The voice she used when she was working not to cry in public. I'll wait outside. I should have taken her hand right then. I should have turned us both around and walked back to the car. I've thought about that moment more than I can count. Instead, I watched her go around the side of the house toward the back, and I walked inside. Leonard was in the kitchen talking to a man in a quarter zip who turned out to be Bonnie's cousin, the cardiologist from Scottsdale. He shook my hand and asked what I did. When I said I taught shop at a public high school, he nodded the way people nod when they're already thinking about the next thing they want to say. I kept watching through the sliding glass door. Zoe was on the porch. She'd found a folding chair and pulled it against the wall out of the wind. She had her phone in her lap, but she wasn't looking at it. She was looking at the yard. Bonnie's actual kids, her teenage son from her first marriage and his friend, were in the living room playing something on a gaming setup that had to cost close to $2,000. Nobody sent them to the porch. I excused myself and went outside. Hey, I pulled a second folding chair over and sat beside her. She looked at me. Dad, you don't have to. I know. That's fine, really. Zoe. She looked back at the yard. A bird feeder hung from a shepherd's hook near the fence. No birds. She's always been like this, since you and Uncle Leonard started coming around after Mom died. At Mom's memorial, she introduced me to people as Diane's little one, like I didn't have a name. I hadn't known that. Last Thanksgiving, she gave me a candle from the guest bathroom as a gift. Still had the Bed Bath & Beyond sticker on the bottom. $6. She said it without bitterness, just the way you report a fact. She gave her son's friend an Amazon gift card for $100, and she's never met him before in her life. Each one was a separate thing I hadn't seen. Why didn't you say something? She shrugged. You don't have a lot of family left, Dad. I didn't want to be the reason things got weird. I sat with that. The bird feeder swayed a little in the wind. You are worth more than everyone in that house, I said. You know that, right? She gave me a look that was halfway between a smile and something sadder. I know who I am. But I could see it. The way she was sitting, like she was trying to take up less space in the world than she deserved. We stayed on that porch another 20 minutes. Through the glass door, I could see the guests moving around. Bonnie refilling wine glasses, Leonard laughing at something with the cardiologist. A photographer arrived, which I hadn't expected. One of Bonnie's clients, apparently, who moonlighted doing portraits. She started arranging the family near the fireplace. Bonnie and Leonard in the center, her son. Leonard's daughter from a previous marriage who was visiting from Indianapolis. Neat and complete. At no point did anyone come to the back door. When Bonnie finally appeared, she opened the slider and said, "We're sitting down. You can come in now." The way you'd call a dog that had been patient long enough. I stood up. Zoe stood up beside me. The dining room table was set for 12, china and cloth napkins, little place cards in silver holders. I found mine near the end. I looked for Zoe's. It was at the very corner, between the kitchen door and the wall, the seat that would get bumped every time someone came through to refill something. I picked up both our cards and moved them to two open seats closer to the center. Bonnie appeared at my shoulder like she'd been watching. "Those are for the Whitfields." "Then seat the Whitfields where we were." "This isn't Leonard." The table was arranged carefully. "Unarrange it." We looked at each other over the centerpiece. Her eyes were controlled. Mine were done. She took the cards from my hand with 2 fingers, like they were something slightly distasteful, and went to speak with her husband. Lunch proceeded, catered, which I'd expected. Beef tenderloin, twice baked potatoes, some kind of arugula salad that Bonnie described as very napper. The conversations around me were about neighborhoods I'd never be able to afford, private school admissions, a river cruise someone was planning for March. I kept watching Zoe. She was eating quietly, responding when someone spoke to her, smiling at the right moments, being invisible on purpose. Then Bonnie's son's visiting friend, a kid about 16 who'd spent the whole meal talking too loud, leaned across the table and said to nobody in particular, "Hey, what does the bakery girl make an hour? Just asking because I might want a summer job." 2 people laughed, not everyone, but 2. Zoe's face went completely still. I set my fork down. Leonard looked at the kid. "That's enough." "What? It's just a question." "It's not appropriate, drop it." Bonnie touched Leonard's arm. "He's just being funny, he doesn't mean." "She's sitting right here," Leonard said, and his voice had something in it I hadn't heard before. Some friction. "Show some respect." It surprised me. It may have surprised him too. Bonnie's hand tightened on his arm. "Let's not make this into something." And that's when I stood up. The chair scraped against the hardwood and the table went quiet the way rooms do when something is about to change. I looked at Bonnie. "My daughter wakes up at 3:45 in the morning twice a week to bake bread so she can pay her own rent and her own tuition and her own car insurance. She has a 3.8 GPA in a nursing program that turns away more applicants than it accepts. She is going to spend her career keeping people alive. She bought you that candle set with money she earned on her feet at 5 in the morning." I paused. "She drove 2 hours to be here today. And you made her wait on your porch like she was a delivery." The cardiologist cousin was very still. Leonard was very still. Bonnie said, "I think you need to lower your voice." "No." I walked around the table to where Zoe was sitting. I put my hand on her shoulder. She didn't flinch. "My daughter is not background noise at your table. She's not an embarrassment you manage by putting her in a corner. She is the best person I know, and she learned that from her mother, who was the best person you ever had in your life. And you have spent the last 16 years treating her daughter like an inconvenience." The room was absolutely silent except for the jazz still playing low from somewhere in the house. Bonnie stood up. "You need to leave." "We're already leaving." I looked at Leonard. He met my eyes. Something passed between us. Regret maybe, but he didn't stand. I took Zoe's hand. We walked toward the front hall. Behind us, Bonnie said, "And take your gift with you. We don't accept pity presents." I turned around. The wine rack stood on the credenza near the entry. 8 bottles, stacked in a dark wood holder that I happened to know Leonard had talked about for months before buying it. Custom made. He'd been proud of it. Bonnie was watching me from the dining room doorway. "Don't you dare!" I reached out and pulled the bottom bottle free. The rack leaned, then tipped. 8 bottles hit the hardwood floor in a chain, 2 of them breaking, red wine spreading across the pale wood and pooling against the baseboard. The sound was enormous. The room stayed silent for a long moment. "My daughter smells like fresh bread," I said. "There are worse things in the world." We walked out, down the driveway, got in the car, pulled onto the street. Neither of us said anything for the first 5 miles. Then Zoe said the wine rack was maybe a little much. "Probably." She laughed. It was shaky at first and then it was real. I laughed too, and then we were both quiet again, the good kind of quiet. We stopped at a Waffle House off the highway in Dayton. We sat in a window booth and ordered eggs and coffee, and those hash browns that are somehow better than any hash brown you could make at home. Zoe wrapped both hands around her mug. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the early shifts. "How long have you felt that way around her?" I asked. She thought about it. "Since I was about 10. She came to my school play and introduced herself to my teacher as Diane's sister, not as my aunt. like I was a footnote. 16 years old at the time of the play. 12 years I hadn't seen it. I should have seen it sooner. You were busy surviving, Dad. She said it simply, not as comfort exactly, just as fact. We both were. We drove the rest of the way home with the radio on low, fell asleep on the couch that night somewhere during whatever movie I'd turned on. I woke up with a crick in my neck and Zoe's head on the armrest and something in my chest that felt, despite everything, lighter than it had in a while. Leonard called 3 days later. Not Bonnie, Leonard. He didn't open with pleasantries. I owe you an apology, he said, and I owe Zoe one. What Bonnie did was wrong. I knew it was wrong when she called you about not bringing Zoe. I should have said something then. I didn't. I told myself it was easier not to. I didn't say anything. Bonnie and I are in a rough place right now. Have been for a while. I don't want to make excuses. I just want you to know that I saw it clearly after you left. The way she'd been treating your daughter. I'd seen it before and I'd let it go because it was easier. I'm sorry for that. I listened to him breathe on the other end of the line. Zoe's the one you need to say that to, I said. Not me. I know. I'd like to if she's willing. I'll ask her. She was willing. She met him for coffee in Columbus the following week, a neutral place, a real coffee shop, not a patio she'd been sent to wait on. I drove her there and waited in the car. She was inside for 45 minutes. When she came out, she got in the passenger seat and said, "He cried a little. It was awkward, but I think he meant it." Did it help? She thought about it. Some. That was enough. Bonnie sent a text 4 weeks later saying the wine rack had been insured and that she hoped we could move past things as a family. I didn't respond. That felt like its own kind of answer. In January, Zoe finished her fall semester with a 4.0, her first one. She texted me a photo of the grade report with a single coffee cup emoji at the end. In March, Leonard called to tell me he and Bonnie had separated. He'd moved into an apartment near the university district. He sounded tired but not destroyed. He'd started going to a Thursday night thing at his church. He was trying. That spring, Zoe got into a competitive clinical rotation at Ohio Health Riverside through her program. Only 4 nursing students from her cohort were selected. She found out on a Tuesday and called me from the parking lot of the bakery before she'd even gotten to her car. We went to dinner that night, just the two of us, a place in the short north where the tables are close together and it's always too loud in the best way. She ordered a glass of wine and told me about a patient she'd worked with during her last clinical, an elderly man who'd been nervous about a procedure, and how she'd sat with him for 20 minutes before the attending came in, just talking about his garden, his tomatoes specifically, because that was what he needed, someone to sit with him. He sent a card to the nursing department, she said. They read it in our lecture. I didn't know it was him at first, then they said the name. She was smiling in the way that means the thing matters, not just the fact of it. Your mum would have done exactly that, I said, the sitting with him part. I know. She turned her wine glass by the stem. I think about her when I'm in those rooms. I don't always know what to say, but I just think, what would she do? And then somehow I know. I didn't say anything to that. Sometimes the right response to something is just to let it be what it is. Leonard came to her clinical celebration dinner that summer, sat across from me at a table in a Clintonville restaurant, ordered the same pasta twice by accident, and made Zoe laugh telling a story about backing his car into the dumpster behind his new apartment building. He was different, smaller in the way that can mean someone has gotten more honest with themselves. After dinner, he walked us to my car. He shook Zoe's hand and then seemed to think better of it and gave her an awkward hug that she returned without hesitation. "I'm proud of you," he told her. "I should have said that a long time ago." She looked at him for a moment. "You're saying it now." On the drive home, she looked out the passenger window at the city going by. "Is it weird that I don't really want a relationship with Aunt Bonnie?" she said. "Like I don't hate her, I just don't want to invest in it. Is that wrong?" "No," I said. Some things you can let go of without forgiving them. They're not the same thing. She nodded slowly. Yeah, that's it exactly. Zoe graduated the following spring. Cap and gown, the whole thing. Columbus Convention Center with about 2,000 other people and their families. I sat in the third row and watched her cross the stage and got tears on my program, which I kept. She's been working at Riverside for almost 2 years now. Night shifts mostly because the pay differential helps with the last of her loans. She still works one Saturday morning at the bakery. Says she likes the earliness of it, the quiet before the rest of the world is up. I believe her. I think about that back porch sometimes. The way she was sitting with her phone in her lap, not looking at it. The way she said, "I'm used to this," with a flatness that meant she really was, which was the worst part. How long she'd been carrying that without telling me because she didn't want to cost me the only family I have left. She didn't cost me anything. She is everything. And I think about what she said in that Waffle House, about surviving, about us both doing it. She was right. 16 years of just the two of us against whatever came next. We made it, more than made it. She still calls me every Sunday morning, usually around 8 when she's on her way home from a shift or just waking up. We talk about whatever, her patients, my students, whether the Buckeyes have any business being ranked where they are. Last Sunday she called and said, "Hey Dad, just wanted to talk." That's enough. That's always been enough. I keep coming back to that folding chair. Not the wine rack, not the table, not the speech I gave in front of people who hadn't earned the right to hear it. The folding chair. The fact that Zoe pulled it against the wall out of the wind and sat down without sending me a single text, that's what stays with me. She'd already learned, somewhere in the years I wasn't paying close enough attention, how to make herself small when the room didn't want her, and she'd decided that was just how things were. The thing about causes and consequences is that they don't always announce themselves. Bonnie didn't wake up one morning deciding to be cruel. It built slowly, the way a lot of damage does. A wrong introduction at a school play. A $6 re-gifted candle with the sticker still on it. A spot at the corner of the table. Each thing small enough to explain away, and I explained every single one of them away because it was easier. Because I didn't want to lose the last family connection I had to Diane. What I didn't see was the consequence already in motion. My daughter learning that her place in that room had a ceiling, and the ceiling was low. When she said, "I'm used to it" on that porch, something in me finally understood the full bill that had come due. Not just Bonnie's bill, mine too. What Zoe built over those years, she built anyway. 4 in the morning shifts, flour on her hands, a 3.8 GPA, a clinical rotation that only 4 students in her entire cohort earned. She didn't build it because anyone made it easy. She built it because she decided who she was and what she was working toward, and she refused to let anyone else's assessment of her become her own. That kind of stubbornness, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't announce itself, is the hardest thing to teach a child. I don't know how much of it came from me. I think most of it came from her mother. But I think about the other side of it too. Intelligence without integrity goes sideways fast. I've seen it in my own classroom. Students who were sharp enough to get by on shortcuts and never learned what it actually felt like to earn something. What Zoe had, and what she carried into those hospital rooms with her, was the combination. She was smart enough to know what she didn't know yet, and honest enough not to pretend otherwise. She sat with a nervous old man and talked about his tomatoes because that's what the moment required, not because it looked good on anything. The consequences on Bonnie's side came without me doing anything else. That's usually how it works. People who treat others as background noise eventually find themselves alone in a quiet house, and the quiet is not peaceful. Leonard moved into a smaller apartment and said it felt more like home. That detail got me. I think what I want anyone to take from this is something simple. The way you treat people who can do nothing for you is a direct reflection of who you are becoming. Zoe knew that at 22 in a way that some people never figure out at 60. She learned it by watching her mother, and her mother learned it by living it. Those things pass down. The good ones and the bad ones both. I stood up at that table because I finally stopped calculating what it would cost me. Turns out it cost me nothing I actually needed.